Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the Real Collective podcast. Thank you so much for coming and visiting and spending a half an hour of your well-deserved time with us. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who you think might take this information to heart. And what we're going to talk about today, Kyle, is the idea of a lot of people are hitting stuff and they're saying, hey, you know what? I want to buy a house in X amount of time, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. And they're coming and they're saying, hey, I want to get myself set up. What do I have to learn? What do I have to know? What do I have to do financially so that I'm going to be in good standing when the time comes? And I think a lot of agents will turn around and they'll say, hey, just buy a house now, you know, and which is obviously not what the clients are saying. They're saying, hey, I want to get set up so that when the time is right for me, here's what it is I need to do. So I think we can break all this down. How, of course, if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, thank you so much for your ears. And you can book an appointment with Kyle or I directly below in the Calendly links. Kyle, how you doing? How's your Halloween?
I'll be honest, I don't know what's happened. I've become this Halloween Grinchy guy for some reason. Like I don't dislike it, but like we just, we busy kids, life, this, that, and the other thing. Like we didn't have any pumpkins. We were bad like that. Definitely like still going trick or treating. Love taking my daughter out. Great.
Yeah.
But it was, we were definitely that like Scrooge McDuck house on Halloween. It was pretty, I'm not happy with myself. We're gonna get better, but for now, that's what it was.
We were the full-size chocolate bar house. So
Ooh,
yeah, right. I remember being a kid. Like you go to the house that has the full-size chocolate bars.
did you hear? Did you hear about the guys? I think it was. I don't know if it was in the States or in Canada. I can't remember. But they were giving away 2 liter bottles of pop. I'm like, you just be sitting there, just like, oh my god, this is so heavy. Walking around like your 5-year-old kid, just dragging your bag, your pillowcase.
Your pillowcase just rips and just
Yeah,
all over
mom's not happy about that. Mom was not happy.
we our kids are young. Like I've got 7 and 4, and then of course the 1-year-old, but she didn't make it that far. But we brought a wagon with us, right?
Yeah.
So we can empty the bags, fill up the wagon. The 4-year-old, by like an hour into it, she's like, can I just ride in the wagon? It's like, yeah, ride in the wagon. So we were constantly like unloading bags into the wagon. That's where the 2 liter would have gone. But yeah, that is a move, 2
Oh,
liter.
but yeah, I'm sure people were just like getting out the glow sticks, just like you're going to that guy's house, full size chocolate bars down the hall. Let's go. Yeah.
We had 90 of them, and at the end of it, we still had probably, I'm gonna say, 10 left. So we must have only had 80 kids, and like a block away from us, like my friends, they had full size as well. 200, they had 200 kids. So I don't know if people like doubled them up or something like that, but yeah, it was who knows, eh? Anyways,
Yeah.
Halloween was fun. We are getting towards the end of the year, the end of 2023, and it's been a weird year, that's for sure. So we'll break it down. Like I say, I think this is the time of year where people start to put plans into motion. They start to think about, okay, well, I'm gonna buy, but we're hearing a lot of people saying I'm gonna wait until spring, or I'm gonna wait until whatever, right? Their point is, oh, the rates are too high, and my comeback is always like, well, that's exactly why you should be buying when the rates are as high as they can possibly be. We talked about this last time. The higher the rates, the lower the price, the better the deal. The payments are going to be the same, and your refi is going to be lower when the rates are as high as they are. So that's why I think you should buy now, but it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters what you as a client are hoping to do. So you've got some pretty good setup ideas in terms of financing for people, in terms of how to prep.
Yeah, the big thing is like, I mean, there's that conversation to have for sure of, and again, I've said it every time we've done this, right? Is that it's the data. Like, don't go with feeling of, well, I feel like this, if you believe something's going to happen, that's a different situation. That's fine. But if it's like, well, I feel like if the rate's this and the payment's going to be this, then I'll do X, right? No, just do the math. Ask your finance person. Do the math. If my house is 750 and the rates are 4, what's my payment? If I buy this house today at 650, my payment and my interest rate is 6, what's my payment? Right? Because again, what are you worried about? Right? If your fear is that the value of the house is going to drop, I think you're a little misguided there to a degree. If it's about the payment, that's pure math, baby. Like just do the math and you'll figure it out. Right?
There's an online mortgage calculator on our website, realcollective.ca. Click on the button resources, drop down mortgage calculator. It's right there. Anybody
Well,
can,
if we're plugging
do
ourselves, I
it,
have a mortgage app too. Like that,
do it.
that's
Yeah,
fine if we're plugging ourselves. But
plug
hey,
it, plug it. Say it, Kyle.
so well, I just did. I got a mortgage app. I'll have to get it. I'll have to get the link. I can put it in there. But yeah, we'll do that. But I think the other thing too is that now is the time. There's two things we were talking off camera before about, and I'll get there. But this is a perfect time actually for specific groups of clients to start prepping, specifically people who are self-employed. You've done your 12 months, right? If you're using a calendar year, you've done your 10 months, I guess, but you're coming to the end. You kind of know what's in the pipe. Now's the time to look at it because now you can look at your numbers, know where you are, and literally start to plan what your accountant's going to do, right? How much are we going to write off or not write off? Or start comparing a regular standard A deal with an alternative deal, because there's different ways that we can structure business for self people, but we don't want to do it in your 5-day condition period. we want to do it now, right? And so you can go in with that plan, and even better, not roll into your meeting with your accountant in January, February, March and be like, this is what my mortgage guy told me to do. Do it now. Do it in December and say, hey, my mortgage guy is suggesting this because we want to buy in March, right? And your accountant can say, well, here's the pros of that. Here's the cons of that, right? Like, I literally had my accountant sitting there and I said, look, I want you to show me my tax bill if I claim every single cent that I made this year and wrote off nothing, right? When I woke him up after he passed out, I hit him a bit and he was like, oh, I was like, okay, yeah, exactly. He's like, are you mad? I said, okay, now let's look at the expenses and say, what are we going to do? And I started weighing the cost benefit of that, right? And, I'll pay higher on my mortgage and do an alternative mortgage to avoid 75% of income tax, right? That I would have to pay if I claimed every single penny I made or whatever it was, right? But that's the kind of planning people want to do now in those specific groups for sure. Just to have a look at that.
Yeah, and I've never been the guy who was great for filing my taxes like instantly, but I'd love one day to get to the point where I'm like, okay, great. You know what? It's December 31st. As of January 1st, click. I know exactly how much money I made this year, exactly how much I've written off. I've spoken to my account. I know how much money between, Jan and the end of February. Here's what I'm going to put into my RRSPs, whatever, whatever. I'm not that guy. At one point, I would love to be that guy. Yeah, I think it's possible, right?
We can totally title this like "Do as I say, not necessarily as I do." Like, it's a great suggestion, and I know it's hard. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that's this the perfect time, especially if your business is seasonal, slowing down a bit. You got that couple weeks of Christmas. Yes, it sucks. You want the vacation too. I get it, but it's a great time to do that if you're in the market to get going, because typically on a business for self deal, in a lot of cases, we actually need a 2-year history. So we've already got last year's. So now let's prep with this year, right? Or if you're brand new, cool. We'll plan that 2 years out and say, look, if everything holds the same, let's do this year. We'll do the same next year. And once you're into the house, then readjust how you're going to do your accounting, right? Because this is what's going to get you in. So it's an important part of the process. It's boring, but it's needed. It's needed because trying to do it in that first 10 days, you'll hate me. I'll hate you. Your account's going to go nuts and quit. Just prep.
Yeah, it's again, I think you're absolutely right. It's easier said than done, but the thing is, like, it has to get done. So the question is, do you want to do it like now and ahead of the ball, or do you want to do it when you're like your back's to the wall? So that's one good piece to prep. Shifting gears just a little bit, I heard that there was a 40 or a 50-year amortization available, so that's really cool for a couple different lenders, or one or two different lenders, or maybe like one different lender. I don't want to sidetrack this whole conversation, but that's interesting.
It's more for my understanding of it anyway is that it's not like it's being given to everybody. It's for people who are in some of those mortgages where they bought at the peak and variable, and they were static payments, which means their payment did not rise with their variable, so they're just pure interest and then some, and they're looking at readjusting that because in a typical scenario, right, if your amortization is ballooned to over 30 years, then you have to make a lump sum payment to get your amortization back in line.
Right.
And that's literally like getting a letter in the mail and saying, hey, you need to pay us 50 grand. From where?
Oh,
Right?
sure.
Like,
Let me just.
yeah, no problem. Just gonna go to the couch. I'll be right back. So the meth lab isn't up and running yet, but so anyway, but like it just that's so I think my understanding is that they're extending that on the back end. So the lenders agreeing to help people out and extend that amortization to bring the payment down so they don't have to make a massive lump sum, and they're just gonna have to rejig their payments.
Got it. So, okay, and then shifting gears and talking a little bit more about getting prepped for your purchase. Um, you ran through a scenario before we jumped on camera, and I think it's
Mhm.
run it through again.
So I think one of my suggestions to people is to not necessarily like compartmentalize, if that's the word, all of like the things you pay for, right? Like people will look at their mortgage and say, the interest is high and that payment's high. But in general, the house isn't typically what's hurting everybody the most. Like it, and I got to be careful with that because I mean, yes, it takes up a bigger chunk of your overall budget and your net income and stuff. But if something else wasn't there, you could still afford to allot that money to the mortgage in the current state that we're in. So, for example, if you're trying to buy a place and you've got, getting a $500,000 mortgage, but you're carrying $100,000 worth of car, and i.e. the payments that go with that, you essentially are paying for a $650,000 mortgage. So if you're someone sitting there right now, saving, 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 good for you. You've got 30, 40, 50 grand, which I know sounds crazy, but a lot of people can do that very well. 30, 40, 50 grand. You may not need to save any more money. What you could do, I never say need or should, I hate that, but what you could do is stop saving. Take that money and apply it to those bigger debts now. So those are paid off. People say, yeah, but I'm on 0% financing, or, my car payments, whatever. The thing with the mortgage math is that if you were able to get like adding $30,000 to your down payment is not going to move the needle nearly as much as you want it to. Not nearly as much. But if you take that same 30 and pay off a car, I guarantee you that the increase in your mortgage, because you didn't put the down payment, but the decrease in that debt, it'll come down by half. Like your mortgage is going to go up $250, but you're opening up $600 off your car.
Yeah.
So the 30 grand is better spent, in my opinion, there, and you're just readjusting where that money's going.
And
So to look at it from a monthly standpoint, right, is can be a better solution than just compartmentalizing into this, or hoping that saving more money is going to be your saving grace on the down payment, because typically it's just not.
Well, it has. I'm sure it has everything to do with the amortization, the fact that you're amortizing the house over 25 years and your car is over max 8, right? So
100%. 100%.
all it is. Again, it just breaks down into the math piece. So before we take a quick break, any other tips or tricks for people who are getting themselves ready to think about buying in 6, 12, or 18 months?
Yeah. Again, a little dorky, but one of the biggest things that people don't get until you get into the house is how much are the utilities? What am I going to spend? Right? How do I budget for that? Cheat. Like the word resources is just using whatever you have around you, right? And you know what you have around you? Parents that live in a house, right? Well, I'm not buying that big of a house. Who cares? Ask them. I need your I need your hydro bill. I need your water bill. I need your property tax bill, right? Whatever other bill, I need your gas bill, whatever comes in, and just make copies of them. And if you can take that amount of money and put it aside or drop it down 10 or 15%, whatever, at least you have a baseline. Take that money, put it aside, right? What have you done? You've paid your utilities. You've paid utilities on a house. So if you're comfortable doing that and you're still saving money, what are you doing? You're paying a mortgage, you're paying a house. But that'll at least give you a baseline to pretend with, but it'll give you a baseline to be able to figure out and how to adjust how you're going to pay your utilities. It won't be exact, it won't be the same. But hey, if they're in a bigger house than you, it'll be more and you're paying less. Like, it works. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good idea. I think a lot of people who they're saying, oh well, I'm saving my down payment. It's like, yeah, okay, great. You're putting $2,000 a month extra away. Good, that's awesome. Congratulations. That's a big deal. Not everybody can do that. And then when you move into the house, it's like, oh, the $2,000 I was putting away, I'm not putting away anymore because it's now going to my mortgage or my property taxes or utilities or whatever they are, right? So it's like getting into that mindset is the right move. So that's great. On the second half, we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to prepare yourself from looking at the real estate market, and what you can do not just from a financial point of view, but from a knowledge point of view before you get into a house over the next 6, 12, or 18 months. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might be thinking about moving the next 3, 6, 12, 18 months, whatever it is. And you can schedule an appointment with Kyle or I directly in the Calendly links if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you very much for your ears, and we'll see you on the flip side.
This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective. Real Collective brings together best-in-class real estate agents and collective experts in the field to deliver the best possible service to our clients. We govern ourselves with honesty, open-mindedness, and compassion. With diverse skill sets, our agents are able to better serve a wide array of clients, including first-time buyers, first-time sellers, transferees, estate sales, investors, and rural, vacation, and luxury properties. Authenticity and transparency are pillars of our process, which allows us to put our clients at the center of everything we do. Our years of experience and knowledge allow us to deliver prestigious service and optimal results. If you are interested in buying or selling your home, contact us today at realcollective.ca.
Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the second half of the Real Collective podcast with your friend Kyle Miller and Sean Tasse. Thanks so much for your ears and your eyeballs on YouTube. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who you think might be thinking about moving in the next 6 to 18 months. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you very much. If you'd like to book an appointment with Kyle or I, you can do so in the Calendly link below. We're going to talk a little bit about getting ready from a real estate transaction point of view. So as you're going through this idea of, hey, I want to buy a house in the next 6 to 18 months, what can you do to prep? What can you do to get ready? And I think really straightforward is you can meet with a professional free of charge. Either Kyle or I, you can book an appointment with us in the Calendly links. Easy. Sit down and talk about how you can set yourself up for success, right? Start to understand what the market is looking like. What do I actually get for, my monthly payment? How can you justify, right now in rent, hey, I'm paying, whatever it is, $2,000 a month. Okay, great. Whatever you want to buy, it's going to cost you $3,000 a month. How are you going to justify making that jump, right? What do you get for that $3,000 a month? What does that buy you? Looking around at different neighborhoods, different areas. What's your lifestyle? What's important to you? What are you willing to live without, right?
What do you say to the first time buyers who, like, your approach? I just find this interesting, like, the expectations, right? Like, we've all seen that joke. I think we've all seen that meme on Facebook where it's like, well, maybe if you don't go to Facebook because you're younger than me, but where it's like, it's HGTV, HGTV, and they're like, yeah, what's your budget? 1.2 million, because I collect butterflies and I sharpen pencils for a living. Ha ha ha. Right? Like, how do you temper those? How do you manage that and temper people's expectations, or just keep them within their expectations?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are pretty level-headed in Ottawa for the most part, and I think uh, having that sit-down conversation and starting to pull up some different ideas, like, hey, you want to spend, I mean, if you sharpen pencils and
Collect butterflies.
collect butterflies or rehabilitate damaged wing butterflies,
Yeah.
you know, I, I I think you know what your budget is. That's what it comes down to, right? It comes down to the monthly payment. You know what your budget is. So hey, right now I'm paying whatever $2,000 a month for rent, or right now I'm living with mom and dad and I'm paying nothing. Okay, well, what do you want to spend per month? And that comes down to, like, we get into what how much money do you make right now? Is that going to change drastically? How much of that money are you allowed to put towards housing? Right? You make $100,000 a year, you know, that is going to buy you in today's world like a $300,000 house. That's what you're allowed to buy from the bank, unless you've got more money coming from somebody else. What can you get for $300,000? Not too
Not a
much,
ton. Not a
right? So
ton.
like,
Yeah.
here are your choices, and I mean, I'm sorry to say, right now, the way it is, you're not getting a lot for that month, for that income. So how else can you bolster your income? If you're single, maybe consider not being single anymore, or at least find. I mean, don't hook up with someone just for the pure, you know, for the pure idea of doubling up your income. But maybe your first house you buy with a partner. Maybe you, and it's not maybe a romantic partner. Maybe it's just a business partner, or someone who you're getting in with, right?
Guilty.
Yeah,
We
right,
did it.
exactly. So hey, you
We
know
did it.
what?
Yep.
Let's go in on this place together. We'll buy a 3 bedroom. You and me, Kyle, we're 21 years old. We want to buy a house. Okay, well, let's buy a house together. I've got half the money. You've got half the money. We're both single guys. We'll buy a 3 or 4 bedroom house, and we'll house hack. We'll rent out the other 2 rooms, right? Now all of a sudden you've got, your Cutco income. I've got my Cutco income. We could show that to the mortgage broker, and at the time we could have bought a house in Rockcliffe Park.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
25 years ago. But something along those lines, right? How can you increase, who can you leverage? If it's not your parents, cool. It wasn't my parents. Who else can you work with, or who else can you get along with and live with, and get yourself onto the ladder? Because as soon as you get onto the property ladder, like, this whole new world opens up to you, right? So
Would would you handle? Do you think you'd handle? Because I was just thinking about this. Uh, Someone who's a renter, who's been a renter, right? Understands the utilities, and I gotta write this check every first of the month or whatever it is, right? Would you handle that differently than, let's say, first time buyer, like, we're living in mom and dad's basement, just saving, 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 who's never actually had, other than the savings, which is good, but like, who's never had to handle that transaction? Would you handle that differently?
yeah, so I think it's an educational piece in the initial conversation, right? So a lot of the times, like, the buyer consultation that I do is geared toward what you're used to doing, and some of that conversation breaks it down and talks about, okay, well, what's your budget? What are you going to be spending? What about the other things that you never really consider? How are you going to move? Is it going to be a moving truck? Are you going to get some buddies with beer and pizza? There's a cost to that, right? There's all of these different costs, and a lot of the times, whether they're paying, $2,500 for rent plus another $500 in utilities, so they're paying $3,000, and they're looking to buy a place, and it's going to cost them $4,500 a month. Or if they're living at, mom and dad's basement, and they're moving out, and they're going to be paying whatever it is, $3,000 a month, because the place they're buying is a little less expensive. My question is always the same, and it's this: is how are you going to justify spending that much more than you're used to spending right now? Right after looking it through and saying, like, okay, well, here's all of the expected costs. Here's what the utilities are going to cost, all that kind of stuff. How do you justify it? Because it's not up to me. I'm not going to sell you anything. I'm not going to make you do something that you're not comfortable with. But I'm going to ask you how you're going to make sense of it. And a lot of people, they just turn around and say, yeah, you know what? I'm owning a place. It's going to increase in equity. And instead of paying that money out to someone else, I'm almost repaying it to myself. right?
I have an interesting story on that. There's a friend of mine who's he lives with his girlfriend for a long time, and they've always rented,
Yeah.
and her place, and I think there's some rent control there, so it's low, like it's like $1,500 or something like that, and it's not moving, right? And he's inherited some money, and he's been talking to me. He's like, I've always wanted to buy. Like, should I buy? And rah rah rah. And he's like, and his exact words were, but he's like, man, we're comfortable where we are, and that rent's not changing. And you're telling me the price of this, if I buy, is this. He goes, ah, I don't know about that. And our conversation actually switched. Now, this is unique because he has more money that's come to him than the average bear, right? So he can do a 20% down payment. We switched that conversation to, what about buying an investment property? Right? Like, you don't have to leave. Stay there. That's fine. That's a great financial decision, quite honestly. But you still own something else, right? It's like some people's thoughts of like rent where you live and own where you can rent, right? And he's in that situation. I'm like, that's not a bad idea. Like, how are you going to tell someone that it makes complete sense to jump out of 1,500 into 3,000 just because,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Like,
that's a big time. That's a Grant Cardone's a big fan of that, right? And
yeah,
he's like, oh well, go and buy rental properties. It doesn't have to be in your own city. You can go and buy rental properties around the world, and rent wherever you're at right now, with the knowledge that, hey, if you want to go live in Monaco, hey, look at that, the tenants are leaving, and there's a month that I can go and live in Monaco in the place that I own for free, right? And then turn around and go find somewhere else to rent, and maybe not give up the place that you're in right now, right? So I mean, yeah, that's a great idea. I don't think that's a lot of first time home buyers. A couple of them,
no, no, like I said, unique, but yeah.
but yeah, I think the other thing to do, if you are planning on moving in the next, buying a house in the next 6 to 18 months, you want to start to really pay attention to the market, right? Get nerdy about, what do I get for, particular price points. So you've narrowed down, okay, here's how much I can spend on a house. What's important to me, and where, within the city can I get that? Am I doing it inside the city? Does that look like a condo? Is there condo fees associated with it? What does that have an effect in terms of my monthly budget? Or I really want a garage. Well, geez, the only way you're going to get a garage is if you go an hour outside of Ottawa. Are you okay with that? No, I'm not okay with that. Okay, so then what are you willing to give up? And to really pay attention to not just what the places are listed for, but what they're actually selling for, right? And the market changes seasonally, right? So, hey, I'm looking for the next, whatever it is, 12 months. I noticed that, or maybe someone told me, if I buy in the winter time, I might get a lower price deal by like 5 to 7%. But instead of having to rely on an agent who you might have just met, 2, 3 weeks ago, why don't you rely on the data that you've seen? Hey, houses like this townhouse in Barhaven seem to have been selling in the springtime for 650, and now it seems like they're all priced at 599. And geez, you know what? They're actually selling for 570 in the wintertime. Maybe I want to buy in the wintertime instead of waiting until buying in the spring, right? Again, seeing that for yourself versus being told that by someone who, oh, hey, my brother is a realtor and he's a really good person. You're like, I don't know who this person is, right? Seeing it for yourself is a lot stronger than hearing it from someone who you just met, however long ago. Again, you meet with an agent who has the foresight to say, hey, let's set this up, pay attention to the market, watch what's happening. And I really think it's important to see, A, what you can get. I'm just repeating myself now. And B, what the list price to sell price ratio is, so that when you're ready to jump in, you know how to not be ridiculous with a super low ball offer, right?
If we got granular for a sec, and maybe this is me being a nerd and I haven't had to buy a house in 10 years, but if like I look back on things that I didn't do when I bought the several properties that I've rotated through in the past, and it's like, what about some of that stuff? Like, would you suggest to someone, like, look, that's your neighborhood. Okay, well, drive there during the week. Like, go there and just drive around during the week. And then, you know what? Drive there on Saturday, right? Like, drive there on a Saturday, because it's different. Like, I remember we bought it when I moved in with my now wife. She had a house. It was a new build in Orleans, and it was fine. It's a townhouse, right? You can park 2 cars, so that's good. On Saturdays though, I was like, where did all these people come from? Like, how is there this many cars on the street where it went from a 2-lane road to a 1-lane road? Right. And like, oh, look, I thought I was going to save time from where I used to live to moving here to go to work. I saved 5 minutes, like, because traffic in Orleans, if you've been there, it's ridiculous. Right. Like, it's like, would you suggest, like, that seems silly, but would you suggest stuff like that?
Yeah, you always want to drive the neighborhood. That's why gas is cheaper in Orleans, because it always takes longer to get in and out. It's always like 5 cents cheaper. I don't know if you pay attention to that stuff. I'm kind of nerdy about it.
I only guess up there, so I feel like it's always expensive. But
compared to the rest of the city, it's pretty cheap. But yeah, absolutely. You really want to pay attention to your neighborhood, right? If you've got like, hey, I'm definitely moving in here, and you live like on the other side of the city, yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, especially as you're preparing for it, and especially if you're moving to like a smaller community, maybe something that's a little bit further out, like I don't know, like a Kempville or whatever, right? Like, yeah, go there during the day, like, especially, I know it's going to be a pain, but if there's a day where you're not working, go there early and leave as if you're leaving from that neighborhood and drive to your office in the morning to get what that commute time is. And if you're not working, drive, well, I guess you can do it while you're working, leave work and drive as if that was where you're going home, and get a sense of what it is, right? I mean, things that you would never consider sometimes, and different times of the year, it's different. Sometimes on the drive home, I get on the Queensway and the sun is just in my eyes, and it's blinding, right? And so it's like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to live in the West End, because the drive home is going to suck, for 3 out of 12 months during the year, or whatever. It is what it is, right? So yeah, I mean, you can really get into it, especially if you've targeted a neighborhood. At the beginning, I would also say, like, yeah, you might have targeted neighborhood because you got friends close by or whatever, but don't close the door on any other neighborhoods, because it might be the case that something is more important to you than the neighborhood. You might want more house, and your money goes further in a different neighborhood. So don't, unless you're really sold on an area, I'd say open that up. So yeah, during the research phase, keep definitely as much of an open mind as you can, I think, is my point.
Biggest mistake you made as a first-time buyer?
Oh, not hiring a real estate agent.
You bought on your own?
I bought from a builder on my own. Yeah.
Wow. All right.
And it cost me. One of the reasons I got into the business, because I didn't realize that I could have hired someone and it would have cost me zero.
How did it cost you at the builder?
They set all the terms. No one was advocating for me. Nobody knew. I didn't. What do I know? I'm a right. Exactly. Where do I sign? Okay.
Yeah.
You're telling me when to move.
I can get granite? Awesome.
Not even. Not. You're painting it for me? Great.
Wicked.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. Right. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it. So if I could have hired someone, it would have cost me zero, and I would have had a much better, deal.
Experience.
Probably, but also a much better deal. So one of the main reasons I got into real estate was when I went through the process and bought my house new from the builder. I didn't hire an agent, and it was really eye-opening for me that I missed out a lot. So there you go. Same question to you before we wrap
up. It's funny. It's not the same answer, but it's the same answer. Like I have no idea how I got my first mortgage. No idea. I was not a mortgage agent at the time. I was working what I was doing. I'm pretty sure it was my partner, my buddy that we bought a house with. He carried a lot of this because I have no clue how we got this mortgage. None. I was there. I went to the office once. She's like, send us the stuff. I'm like, okay. And then we showed back up. We signed some stuff, and like that was it. I'm like, what happened? And then we went out for dinner because we were like, we bought a house. Like it was literally like that. I'm like, this is insanity. So I get why people think it's so easy, because I had that same experience when times were different. And now if they're comparing it to now, and like, this isn't what I'm used to. So that was my biggest mistake. I had no clue, none, what I was getting into. And I was ignorant to that. Not a reason I got into the business, but glad I did in the end. I just love not doing that for other people.
Yeah, exactly. Same.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're over time, but I think that was helpful for anybody who's hoping to move in the next 6 to 18 months. And I think this is going to probably be evergreen content. So as
Yeah.
always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think is planning on moving in the next 6 to 18 months. And you can book an appointment directly with Kyle or I to go through all of this stuff and to really pick out what's important to you in the Calendly links below. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, thank you so much. And until the next time, keep it real.
Collective.